Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second annual meeting of the Nova Scotia College of Nursing. I am Charmaine McPherson, Chair of the NSCN Board. I will now call the meeting to order. The 2021 annual meeting of the Nova Scotia College of Nursing is now in session. To begin, I'd like to welcome all of you and thank you for joining us. We are delighted and proud to share that we have had 161 individuals register for today's annual meeting. We have people joining us from all across the province, across the country, and even outside of Canada. It is comforting during this challenging time to be joined by so many of you. It's especially meaningful considering nurses from every tip of the province and across the country have been called upon to assist in meeting the incredible health system needs brought on by COVID-19. This global pandemic has shown the world the significant role nurses play in healthcare and in emergency public health response. Nurses have been on the front lines of COVID-19, and we have helped to mitigate the public health impacts of the virus by displaying the courage and commitment for which nurses are known. We see the work you do. We know the impact you have, impact on your patients, colleagues, and the communities in our province and beyond. We're grateful for the challenging yet rewarding work you do for all Nova Scotians. We appreciate that you have made this meeting a priority, and thank you for joining us. Before we move into the rest of the AGM agenda, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce the NSCN Board. Pleased to be joining all of you online. We have the following board members: Jason Reeves, Board Vice Chair, Registrant, and our public representatives, Anne-Marie Delory, Betty Thomas, Michael Gillis, Paulette Anderson, Susan Nasser, and Registrant board members, Shanda McDonald, Shauna Snow, Sherry Price, and Teresa McDonald. I know they're pleased to be joining all of you online today as well. Also with us today, we have the NSCN CEO and Registrar, Sue Smith, and our independent auditor from Grant Thornton, Chris Treneman. Our second agenda item is a review of the 2021 annual meeting format, which I'd like to walk you through next. You may notice that those of us presenting today are doing so from our homes. This is so we adhere to the COVID-19 gathering restrictions here in Nova Scotia. Fortunately, we have all gotten much more comfortable getting together safely in online environments, and we've worked hard to use this technology to provide you with the best online experience possible today. IT staff are standing by to provide support for those who may experience technical issues, and I ask that you please type your technical issues into the chat box on your screen if you require assistance. Everyone would have received an email with the links to the information required for this afternoon's meeting. And in that included the annual meeting agenda, minutes from the 2021 NSCN annual general meeting, the 2020 NSCN annual report, the NSCN bylaws, and a resource entitled Stakeholder Participation and Engagement. You may have noticed when receiving today's agenda that we have made a few changes to our annual meeting process, and you'd be correct on that. As part of our ongoing opportunities for learning and enhancement, we reviewed annual meeting processes for areas of growth and clarity. In February of this year, the board proposed bylaw revisions that would allow for changes to two aspects of the NSCN annual meeting that would do two things. Firstly, more clearly demonstrate NSCN's regulatory mandate, and secondly, enhance the experience for all of you, our annual meeting participants. After an open public consultation period, the proposed revised bylaws were passed. We believe that the bylaw revisions will create a better experience for you today and better reflect our role as a regulator. The changes include three areas. First, to improve participation and encourage more open discussion, the requirement to use Robert's Rules of Order for the annual meeting was removed. And I'm sure that would please many of you. Secondly, to improve administrative efficiency, the board approved the minutes of last year's annual meeting prior to the annual meeting today. And thirdly, replacing the requirement for registrants to raise formal motions from the floor with a new discussion period. So if registrants wish to raise motions for board consideration, they have the opportunity to do so at any time throughout the year. And that's according to Board Policy 3.13.4. More information on how to use this process can be found on the board policies, in the board policies located on the NSCN website. So please visit our website, www.nscn.ca, for additional information about the bylaw changes as well. You may also have noticed that we have a discussion period included in this meeting as an agenda item. This is an opportunity for you to raise questions you may have and for us to respond. You may ask a question or make a comment on the information presented. You can ask a question concerning other nursing regulatory matters as well. While we address your questions during the scheduled discussion period, we encourage you to submit your questions at any point throughout the meeting using the chat function, which you will find at the bottom of your screen. You can type your question into the chat box and click enter to send the message to us. You should be looking for a chat icon in the meeting controls menu. It looks like a speech bubble. If you don't see the menu, hover your mouse over the bottom of your screen and you should see the icon I'm referring to. In order to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to participate, we ask that you ask questions on a topic only once. As chair, I will use my discretion in limiting or extending questions or discussion to ensure the proper functioning of the annual meeting and to adhere to the agenda timelines, which were approved by the board. We'll address as many of your questions as possible during the time allotted. If we are unable to get to your question because of timing or because your question requires more consideration for a thorough response, we've committed to responding in writing to all questions received, and this information will be shared with all stakeholders on the NSCN website and in the newsletter. Now let's move along to agenda item 3. You would have received a link to a copy of the 2020 NSCN annual meeting minutes. The board approved these minutes on April 12th, 2021, and they are submitted for your information. Now we'll move along to item 4. There was a motion carried at the 2020 NSCN annual meeting that read that at least one LPN/RPN, one RN, and one NP be represented on the board. As a board, we would like to thank the individuals who raised this motion. The board discussed and considered the motion at our December 2020 board meeting. Composition of the NSCN board was an important consideration for each of the legacy colleges during the creation of NSCN, and it remains an important consideration for us today. As a regulator, registrant board members are required to regulate in the public interest. As a result, the NSCN board members do not represent specific registrant groups. The nurses who make up the registrant members of the NSCN board do not represent their own nursing designation. They, like the board's public representatives, uphold the public interest as their top priority. As a board, we decided that aside from what is required by the Nursing Act, we would not designate board seats to any particular designation of nurse. This decision, however, still permits the board to seek out or receive applications from nurse practitioners to sit on the NSCN board. After thoughtful consideration and dialogue, the board voted that no further action be taken, and I notified both the mover and seconder of the motion from last year on this decision. The information was also shared with all stakeholders on the NSCN website. We'll now move on to agenda item 5. A call for resolutions was issued on January 20th, 2021, which provided registrants the opportunity to submit resolutions to be considered pursuant to Bylaw 26. Since there were no resolutions proposed, there's nothing to report under this agenda item. And so with that, we're now going to move on to the sixth item on our agenda, the NSCN 2020 Annual Report. At this time, I would like to remind you again that you're welcome to submit questions at any time throughout the meeting, anything that you'd like addressed during the discussion period. Please remember to submit your question to us through that chat function at the bottom of your screen. And at this time, I'd now invite Sue to help me present our Chair and CEO report.
Thank you, Charmaine. And hello, everyone. It's good to see you, even though it's from a distance. It certainly goes without saying that as we reflect upon the last year, that 2020 is a year that none of us will soon forget. In March of 2020, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic, impacting all corners of the world. It was also the year the WHO declared it the International Year of the Nurse and Midwife, which seems fitting, particularly with the benefit of hindsight. As COVID-19 first made its presence known last year, nurses stepped into a time of great uncertainty and provided care and innovation without a second thought. While the challenges posed by the pandemic were many, so too were the efforts of the nursing community to make a positive difference in the lives of others. In June of 2020, we reached the milestone of our very first anniversary as the Nova Scotia College of Nursing. In addition to continuing to build upon the foundation and the work that we required as a new organization, we seamlessly maintained day-to-day operations, all while responding to the impact of COVID-19. In fact, we believe we owe much of our success in responding to the pandemic, building upon our foundation, and being there for number one, our public, and all of our other key stakeholders, like the registrants and all of you. So we do think that most of this was due to being one nurse regulator for all Nova Scotians. 2020 was also a year that will be remembered for accelerating society's much needed conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity, inclusion, and cultural competence were identified as a priority for the board and the staff when it was incorporated into our very first NSCN strategic plan in 2019. Evidence shows that healthcare systems that embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion not only improve the healthcare systems, but they also deliver better outcomes for clients. We are proud that the nursing community recognizes that we all have an active role to play in making changes that positively impact Nova Scotians, including those who represent the many diverse individuals and communities in our province. In the 2020 annual report, we focus on some highlights on how we delivered on our three strategic objectives of effective regulation, accountable regulation, and transparent regulation. Over to you, Charmaine.
Thank you, Sue. On page 7 of the report, you'll see a few examples of how we delivered on the strategic goal, effective regulation. As the first governing body of NSCN, one of the board's priorities for 2020 was the development of new bylaws that govern the election process of registrants to the board. As a new organization, it was necessary to create a process that would establish, among many other things, board composition and quorum, the election process for the board, and eligibility criteria. In particular, the board developed these bylaws to adhere to best practices in creating a competency-based board while ensuring that all registrant board members are elected to the board as required by the Nursing Act. These bylaws were passed with consultation after consultation with our stakeholders. This saw the creation of a nominating committee, which screened and recommended candidates to fill board vacancies with a goal of creating a balanced and diverse board while still providing all registrants the ability to put their names on the final election ballot. The bylaws enabling those processes were passed, setting an important milestone in establishing a process and structure to secure the future of NSCN boards. Now, I'm proud to say that we have just gone through our first board election process, and we're very pleased with how things went. A significant oversight function of the NSCN board from a governance level is understanding and mitigating risk to the organization. This has been particularly important for NSCN as a new organization in 2020 with the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2020, the board conducted additional monitoring and oversight using existing board policies to assess the risks posed to NSCN, the CEO's organizational response to the risks, and in maintaining all services of NSCN. Over to you, Sue.
Thank you, Charmaine. It's also important on an operational level and in the face of emergency to ensure that NSCN has the systems and procedures in place to maintain operations, thus enabling us to continue to act efficiently and effectively. In 2020, we leveraged the existing emergency response and preparedness plans from the previous legacy colleges as a foundation to create an updated and enhanced business continuity plan. Few organizations have an opportunity to test their business continuity plans within their first few months of being an organization, but this is exactly where we found ourselves last year. The plan served, most importantly, the public, registrants, and stakeholders very well, and it will continue to be valuable, particularly from a risk management perspective for the future of NSCN as well. With the mandate of public safety, we developed a rapid online emergency relicensing process to permit nurses who were qualified to temporarily return to practice due to the effects of the COVID-19 outbreak. In March 2020, with the first wave of COVID-19, we implemented a process that enabled those qualified nurses who were previously licensed in Nova Scotia and other jurisdictions to temporarily practice in Nova Scotia. The ability to respond to the urgent needs of our healthcare system required fast mobilization and coordination across all areas of NSCN and with a variety of external stakeholders. We were and are certainly proud and pleased to do our part as Nova Scotia's nursing regulator, and we thank all who responded to the call and were part of this very successful process. Another example of delivering on our goal of effective regulation involves the release of the sexual misconduct standard of practice for nurses that was issued in June of 2020. We developed the new standard to meet our mandate of public safety and to help prevent serious harm from occurring by having clearly defined expectations of nurses. We are proud to have developed the standard in collaboration with over 300 individuals who represented the public, nurses, subject matter experts, unions, educators, employers, and other key stakeholders. The sexual misconduct standard is a way to continue to uphold public safety and empower the public, nurses, and others to report sexual misconduct with the confidence in knowing that NSCN takes this matter seriously. As a leader in excellence in nursing regulation, we are only the second regulator in Canada to develop a sexual misconduct standard for nurses. In 2020, we also introduced a number of new operating procedures as a demonstration of our commitment to fostering a safe and ethical work environment, including a new whistleblower policy. The whistleblower policy helps to further set and sustain best practice and behaviors that are expected, as well as those that would need to be reported. The policy is designed to provide assurance to the public and all stakeholders that any potential breaches, misconduct, or any possible wrongdoing at NSCN are dealt with and are also reported in a manner that prioritizes confidentiality for the person reporting the alleged wrongdoing. We are serious about our commitment to finding new and innovative solutions to deliver on our mandate of public protection and to be responsive to the public, registrants, and other key stakeholders. As part of this ongoing work, we launched an 8-week pilot for live chat last year, which allowed us to expand upon our customer experience strategy. The project evaluation told us live chat is a very useful online tool, and it enabled customer service. It allowed stakeholders to engage with our customer experience coordinator in real time. As a result, in December 2020, I'm very proud to say the tool was implemented as a standing feature on our website. As mentioned earlier, 2020 also was a year that accelerated society's much needed conversations around diversity, inclusion, and equity. We are committed to creating positive change and fostering respectful environments where diverse voices from all communities are sought, heard, and incorporated in meaningful ways as a nursing regulator and also as an employer. We all have a role to play in this important work, and the internal part of our journey includes the learning and development of all of our staff. In 2020, we created a staff diversity and inclusion working group and developed NSCN's diversity and inclusion framework. The framework provides staff with the resources, tools, and supports to identify and help address systemic barriers so that NSCN can build a more diverse and inclusive workforce. It also provides the means of future work that integrates diversity and inclusion values and practices into existing organizational processes and for the more effective delivery of services that are inclusive and reflect the diversity of our population. This is important work that we continue to build on, and I look forward to reporting to you next year on all the activities we have underway. Many of you are likely familiar with the COVID-19 Communications Hub we created for our website in 2020. This allowed us to distribute timely, personalized information to all stakeholders, including the public, registrants, employers, and all nurses, particularly those returning to practice. The hub included COVID-19 practice guidelines and scenarios, the rapid emergency temporary relicensing processes, public health directives, and a number of useful resources. It enabled us to engage with all stakeholders and to help support the public and the healthcare system during this, at times, challenging year. The immediacy of our information and tools was so successful that many nursing regulators across Canada had contacted us and accessed the hub and requested the use of our materials, which we're more than happy to share. We again would like to thank all the nurses in Nova Scotia for demonstrating leadership, competence, and compassion during this time. Now I'd like to give you a few examples of accountable regulation. Also a significant achievement for NSCN in 2020 was our work with the steering committee for the National Nurse Practitioner Framework Implementation Plan. It's got a long title. It's on our website, lots of information. The MP project was commissioned by the Canadian Council of Registered Nurse Regulators, CCR&R. CCR&R is composed of all nursing regulators who regulate the practice of nurse practitioners. The project is a multi-year, multifaceted project to develop a common regulatory framework for NPs across the country. Among other things, it includes common NP standards of practice, one national entry to practice exam, and common principles for continuing competence, entry-level competencies, and re-entry to practice. We continue to share updates, decisions, and consultation opportunities on our website and in our newsletter, so please watch for the information. I want to point out, for the sake of time, I've not spoken to all the highlights included in the annual report. I encourage you to please read the report for more comprehensive information. There is no doubt that we will reflect on 2020 as a year of challenge, but it has also laid a path for innovation and discovery. I'm delighted to share highlights of some of NSCN's accomplishments, and we remain grateful to all those who played a role in safe, competent, ethical, compassionate care to Nova Scotians. We know that this work cannot be accomplished alone, and we will look forward to working with you in the future. On behalf of the NSCN team, I would like to thank you for your participation in the work we do on behalf of the nursing profession in Nova Scotia. I would also like to extend my appreciation of all of the staff at NSCN who have worked so hard throughout the year to fulfill our mandate and to deliver on our commitment to the public. I would also like to thank the entire NSCN board for all you do, especially in your governance role on behalf of all Nova Scotians. And to Charmaine, whose term is ending on May 31st. Charmaine, your leadership and collaboration has helped to propel us forward and has provided a strong foundation on which we will continue to grow and innovate. Personally speaking, I have valued our friendship and being by your side the last 4 years. So heartfelt thanks to you, Charmaine. And now over to you.
Thank you, Sue. Even though this is virtual, I feel those wonderful vibes. My time with NSCN has certainly been an incredible experience and one that I'll carry with me for many years to come. I would like to begin by thanking those whom we are here to serve, the public of Nova Scotia. I would also like to thank the over 15,000 nurses in Nova Scotia that NSCN regulates across the province. I've been a nurse for over 33 years, and my time as the NSCN board chair has certainly been a highlight of my career. I believe in the value of nursing regulation, the value this brings to the public, most importantly, and to our profession. It has been a pleasure to serve on this board. I would also like to recognize the board members for their work that is often behind the scenes. And I would like to thank each board member for their efforts at the board table, most particularly Jason Reeves as vice chair of the board with me over the past 2 years. Jason, you've been a wonderful support and superb colleague in the process. I would especially like to acknowledge those board members whose terms are ending at the end of this month as well, Shauna Snow and Sherry Price. As board members, all of you are part of this historic board that helped to reshape the future of nursing regulation in Nova Scotia. In building NSCN, we have created change unlike any other nursing regulatory board in Nova Scotia. We challenge the status quo and sometimes one another, most respectfully. We've continued to search for innovation and to push one another to be better, which made us stronger as a board. I hope that you continue to be proud of what you're accomplishing and in the journey you helped to create. I would also like to thank Sue for your support, your tremendous leadership and friendship over the years. Special thanks also to Heather Totten, who is the lead staff supporting the board and the chair, and my major crutch, I have to say that. It has been both a privilege and a pleasure to collaborate with you and to be part of the story of NSCN. I know our paths will continue to cross, and I am most grateful for that and for our experiences together. Now on to agenda item 7, the NSCN 2020 Auditor's Report. The Auditor's Report is included in the NSCN annual report that was pre-circulated and available on the NSCN website. Mr. Christopher Treneman from Grant Thornton will present the 2020 Auditor's Report for NSCN. I will now ask Mr. Treneman to present the Auditor's Report. We'll have an opportunity to address any questions regarding his report during the discussion period that follows his presentation. So over to you, Mr. Treneman.
Perfect, thank you. Let me share my screen here so we can all see what I'm looking at. That should be up now. Perfect. So it's my pleasure to walk through with everyone this afternoon the audited financial statements for the Nova Scotia College of Nursing. I'm going to start with a couple comments on the Independent Auditor's Report. So the Independent Auditor's Report is a clean audit opinion for the current year. So you can see on the first part of the audit report, the fact that we have audited the financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2020. And in our opinion, the accompanying financial statements do present fairly in all material respects the financial position of NSCN at December 31st and the results of its operations and cash flows for the period. So this is great news, and again, I think speaks highly to the team at NSCN. We were able to complete all the work in a timely manner, particularly given the situation of COVID-19 and the challenges that pose. So I am pleased to report that it is a clean audit opinion for the current year. The main bulk of the statements, though, start with the statement of operations. So I'll take you through a high-level walkthrough of the statement of operations, including the revenues and expenses for the year end. So for those of you who recall last year, there was only one column as the NSCN was a brand new entity. So in the current year, there are comparatives now. So you can see both the 2020 column as well as the 2019 column. However, because the 2019 column was only for the 211-day period ending December 31st, we still see some pretty large swings. So although we have comparative information, they don't represent the complete same time period. So when we look to the current year, we see at the bottom of the page, excess revenues over expenditures of $257,000. So during the year, the NSCN did result in a positive surplus of operations. And that in a large part had to do with a number of cost savings related to COVID-19. When we look specifically to the revenues for the year, we see revenues are at 7.1 million in total versus 4.3 million in the previous year. So again, a large increase, but again, that's really driven by the fact that we're now looking at a full calendar year versus 211 days in the previous year. As we'd expect, when we look at the breakdown, all the categories of revenues are up for the period year over year. You can see that investment income has increased more than one might expect as a result of the full year versus the partial year. And that really is a result of some positive returns during the 2020 year end. When we look to expenditures for the year, we see that total expenses are 6.8 million, up from 4.2 in the previous year. Going through the detail, again, most of it's a function of the fact that we're now looking at a full year versus a partial year. If you prorate the expenses over the period of time, you will note that there have been some cost savings in particular areas as a result of COVID impacting some of the planned processes throughout the year, resulting in some additional savings. Overall, quite consistent though. If we turn the page, we can see the statement of financial position for the organization. So really this outlines the assets and liabilities as at December 31st. So looking first to the asset side, we see that total assets have grown year over year. So total assets of 9.7, up from 9.2 million in the previous year. When we look at the breakdown of what that consists of, the largest portion really would be the investment portfolio. So looking to the portfolio of investments, it's made up of both the short term and the long term. You can see a significant decrease in short-term investments. However, this is offset by an increase in the long-term investments, really driven by timing. Because of the nature of investments, as GICs come due, some are coming due within the next year, some are longer term. So each year that'll fluctuate a little bit, but total investments are quite consistent year over year. The next large change year over year would be cash and cash equivalents. So you can see in the current year, cash balance ending the year at 320,000 versus 37,000 in the previous year. And really that's driven by timing of when amounts have come in the door versus when amounts have been paid out. And the detail is included in the financial statements and the statement of cash flow, fully reconciling that change year over year. The other large change in the asset category would be the prepaid expenses. So you can see a large increase in prepaids. So prepaids consist of a number of pieces that have ongoing benefit to the organization in the future. So although they've had cash outlays during 2020, they continue to provide benefit into the 2021 year. The largest amount in the current year and the amount that's causing the drive and change year over year really relates to those expenses incurred to provide insurance for the members of NSCN. Based on the timing of those payments and when that happened, the majority of that amount was still remaining as an asset to the organization to cover off the 2021 year. When we look to the liabilities of the organization, they're broken both into the current and long term. Looking to current liabilities, the accounts payable and accrual are pretty consistent year over year. And it's really the fluctuation we do see is driven by timing. So those would be amounts that have been invoiced or are owing at the end of the year, but haven't been paid until 2021. The largest amount, though, would be the deferred revenue. So that's really a result of when membership fees are paid, the fees are paid in advance. So although the period of time provides benefit to the individual, it's paid in advance. So it's only recognized in revenue by NSCN when that amount is over the life of the registrant period. Looking to the long-term liabilities, we see two amounts, one relating to a deferred lease incentive, and that's really just driven by the accounting standards that require the accounting expense of office and premises to be written off on a straight line basis versus a cash basis, causing a minor difference. And then retirement benefits. So the retirement benefits have increased a little bit year over year, and that's driven by actuarial valuation, in part due to changes in some of the discount rates, again, driven by the impact of COVID-19. The final portion of the statement of financial position would be the net assets. So looking to the net assets, there are a few different funds held by the organization. The first would be the net investment in property and equipment, really this holding those items that are subject to amortization. And you can see that that balance equals the balance in property and equipment above. The net investment in liquidity reserve is a calculated amount each year to make sure that there is a balance set aside in times of emergency based on the prescribed formula. The continuing education trust has grown a little bit based on investment income earned, really set aside to provide that continuing education for NSCN going forward. And then, of course, most of the assets would be sitting in the unrestricted fund. That balance has grown to 2.4 million at the end of the year, up from 2.1 in the previous year. So together, the liabilities and net assets take us back down to the $9.7 million. So I think those would really be my high-level comments on the statement of operations and statement of financial position. The remaining portion of the financial statements do include the statement of cash flow as well as the required note disclosure. However, there have been no new changes to accounting standards for not-for-profit organizations, so I didn't plan to walk through those in any detail unless, of course, anyone has any questions. So back over to you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Treneman. We appreciate you joining us today and walking us through the information. We will respond to any questions meeting attendees may have about the auditor's report in our agenda item that's coming up next. For those of you following along, we are on agenda item number 8 now, which is our scheduled discussion period. I would like to remind you to submit any questions you would like considered via the chat function. We have 10 minutes set aside for this portion of our meeting. And at this time, I'd like to ask Heather Totten, Senior Director, Governance and General Counsel, who has kindly been moderating our chat box, to read the questions that were received. Over to you, Heather.
Great, thank you very much, Charmaine. So far, we've received a number of questions from meeting participants in the chat box. So I'm going to dive right in. We have a question for the board with respect to submitting resolutions for consideration at the annual meeting. This is a question from Jill, and she asks, I note that no resolutions were submitted for consideration at this meeting. I wonder if, to encourage engagement and participation, the NSCN board would consider hosting educational sessions for registrants, re how to write effective resolutions, and B, the content areas that are within the scope of NSCN.
All right, thanks, Heather. And thank you, Jill, for your question. It's an excellent suggestion, and we'll certainly take that under consideration. Yeah, we agree. It is important to continue to improve registrant engagement in self-regulation. So this would be helpful.
Great. Next, we have a question from Allison. And Allison is wondering, how many are attending the annual meeting today, please? And if it's okay with you, Charmaine, I can answer that. I've touched base with our IT folks behind the scenes. We had 161 people register for the annual meeting today, and we have 76 attending online today. So I'm just going to go down because we have some tech questions here that I'm just moving over. We have our next question is for the CEO from David Benton. David's question is with respect to the live chat, and he asks, with regards to the live chat function, have you been able to identify any issues that may require the creation of a frequently asked questions resource? And if so, what are the themes that are most commonly addressed?
Thank you, Heather, and thank you, David, for the question. Actually, in addition to some of the themes I'll talk on now, if you go to our website, there's the report from the evaluation of the pilot is on the website. It's called About Live Chat. And yes, definitely there were frequently asked questions. We had done the sort of top 10 questions from each of the service area that our customer experience coordinator could answer. And we discovered that although most of the time she could address certainly the most common, when we looked at the themes, the most common questions were registration renewal, how to pay, how to transfer a license to Nova Scotia, document requests, questions from international nurses looking to come to Nova Scotia, and practice support tools and guidelines. We're continuing to monitor live chat, and actually, as part of the evaluation, we're training additional staff support because it's been such a valuable tool. So happy to continue to answer questions if they're sent along through just our normal website, and also to go to About Live Chat for more about the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Heather, have we received any other questions?
Yes, we still have a few more here. This is a question for the CEO about the diversity and inclusion work that she spoke about during her comments earlier. Karen asks, you mentioned diversity and inclusion in your remarks earlier. What specific work have you done to date?
Thank you for your question, Karen. Was it Karen, Heather?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for your question, Karen. There are a number of things, and we're happy to share our framework and the roadmap. And what I'm especially proud of is this is work that was done by staff and leadership at the Nova Scotia College of Nursing. And we have focused internally for the first part of this framework because of the fact of how important it is to first educate the staff so that they can develop their cultural competence. And in that journey, which we've mapped out, we've had some external expertise come in and speak to us around things like white privilege, about racism in general. We have focused on, particularly in February, around Black Lives Matter. We're having an external expert come in to speak to us about Indigenous peoples as well, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. And along through the summer in this framework, we have a combination of self-guided learning with resources that are available, along with something that's been very, very effective through Zoom, having every single staff person, every person in the organization be involved in what we call breakout sessions and discussing key topic areas. So we're really proud. And again, just through the website or wherever, please let us know if you'd like more information about it. It's a continuing journey, and we're really proud and humble on this journey, and happy to share any information. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Heather, do you have another question for us?
We do. This is a question also for the CEO with respect to the NP regulatory framework that she spoke about. Jen is asking, in regards to your information on the nurse practitioner regulation across the country, when is this likely to be completed by?
Thank you for your question, Jen. It really, I'm not trying to avoid the topic. It is a multi-year project. We're looking at deliverables along each of those years. So things like entry-level competencies and items like that may be more straightforward than an RFP just went out for the one common exam for NPs across the country. Although we have a common entry to practice exam for LPNs and RNs, there hadn't been one standard entry to practice exam for NPs. So that's a very multi-year process, but the RFP has been issued and it should be announced soon about the successful vendor for that. And then it's at least a couple of years in building the exam and working with the vendor. So we have on our website, we have specific areas that keep updated on this NP framework. We have representatives not only from staff, for example, Ruth Martin Meisner from Dalhousie University is on one of the committees, the groups that are an advisory board. So go to the website, and as with most any of these things, please ask us if you have any further questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Sue. Heather, where are we with questions at this point?
I think we've got time for a couple of more. We are getting close to out of time. And so we do have a few questions left, but I have one right here that we can end with from Again, this is a question for the CEO with respect to the Provincial Nursing Association. This is a question from Allison, and Allison wants to know, is NSCN in communication with those who are working to have a Provincial Nursing Association?
Thank you, Allison, for your question. We have been in conversation with the folks that are working to look at establishing an association. In fact, I think they've actually established it. I think they registered the name of the association. We are certainly looking at ways where we can, for lack of a better word, collaborate, being conscious of the fact as a regulator, we have certain boundaries that we have to stay within. But certainly we're very supportive of an association being established and looking to stay in conversation where we can do what we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. All right, over to you again, Heather.
Well, I see we're out of time, and there are several more questions. And so, again, we had committed that for all the questions that were asked today, whether we were able to get to them online or if we were unable to get to them, we will be providing the questions and written and responses after the annual meeting through our website and again through our newsletter. So Charmaine, I'll pass it back on to you to keep on with the meeting.
All right. Thank you, Heather, and thank you, Sue, for the responses. So I'd like to thank everybody who has submitted questions today. In order to respect your time and keep the meeting on schedule, I am going to have to end the question period at this time. I apologize that we couldn't get to all of your questions in the time allotted. And as Heather mentioned, NSCN staff will be creating a Q&A document with your questions. So please watch for a response to the question that you would have posed there. The Q&A document will be shared by email with all meeting participants and on the NSCN website. I'll now move on to agenda item number 9, introduction of the new NSCN board. It is my great honor to introduce my colleague, Jason Reeves, as the new chair of the NSCN board for the term starting June 1st, 2021. I've had the pleasure of working with Jason for the past 5+ years, first when he was vice chair and then chair of the College of Licensed Practical Nurses of Nova Scotia. And most recently, of course, in Jason's role as vice chair of the NSCN board. I've had a front row seat to Jason's leadership, professionalism, and counsel, and I know he'll continue to do great things as NSCN board chair. I will be most pleased to watch you, Jason, as chair over the next 2 years. I know that NSCN board is in very capable, knowledgeable, and experienced hands. So Jason, it is with great pride that I turn things over to you so that you may share a few words and introduce the new NSCN board members.
Thank you, Charmaine. We have most certainly seen some incredible milestones together as part of our journey to create one nursing regulator in Nova Scotia, NSCN. I thank you for your guidance, your support, and your friendship. I am very happy to hear that you will remain close by and will continue to make you proud as a board. Before I introduce the new NSCN board members, I would like to echo Charmaine's words and thank the outgoing board members, including Charmaine herself. We've been together as a team for the past 5 years as we have transitioned from 2 legacy colleges to NSCN. The journey we have taken together as the first NSCN board will forever be a special time to me. And I thank you all for everything that you have done. I am also equally as proud to introduce to you the new NSCN board members. Anne-Marie Delory, the public representative of the current NSCN board, will join me on June 1st as the vice chair of the board. Also joining us on June 1st are the newest board members of the NSCN board, who were just elected last week by the nurses of Nova Scotia. Claudia Hines, registrant, Rachel Sullivan, registrant, and Krista Smith, registrant. We welcome you to the board and we look forward to working with you very soon. Back to you, Charmaine.
Thank you, Jason. And congratulations again. We've come to the end of our agenda. On behalf of the board, thank you all for your time, effort, and contributions to regulating the nursing profession in the public's interest. I would like to thank all of you for joining us today. I now declare the 2021 annual meeting of the Nova Scotia College of Nursing of adjourned. Thank you.